All right, let's bring in right now author and MSNBC political analyst Anand Giridharadas. His recent book is titled The Persuaders, at the front lines of the fight for hearts, minds, and democracy. Anand, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
It seems to me there are a lot of people who love to preach the glories of capitalism to single moms and working class Americans, not so much to bankers, because when we get in these situations, we always socialize losses but privatize gains.
We do, and I think that's something that we learned since 2008 as a country, and I think a lot of ordinary people got educated about that. And this time around, there was a lot more vociferous demands from out in the public to not do a bailout. And they didn't do a bailout in the traditional sense, but they still did a kind of aid organized by the government that is going to be taxed by, an assessment funded by an assessment on banks that consumers will pay for. So the American people still are upholding and protecting Silicon Valley Bank. And I think it's very ironic that these very big venture capitalists of Silicon Valley, who are the ones who pulled their money out in panic, in a coordinated panic, to cause the bank run, are this group of people, as you know, who are advocated against government, advocated against common institutions for decades now, use their clout through building these giant corporations to belittle the idea of government, to skirt regulation, as you know. And so then when they have a run on their bank that they caused themselves, they want, nurses and truck drivers and teachers to help pay to backstop their multi-billion-dollar fortunes. And it's embarrassing. And I hope some of them will actually, now having gotten help from all of us, will come forward and advocate for help for us. Maybe they're willing to advocate on student debt, or maybe they're willing to advocate on health care. Maybe they've had a change of heart on realizing religion is good. Government is good, actually.
No. I doubt that's going to happen. I mean, we've seen this for decades, where you've got people who are libertarians until there's a bank run, and then suddenly they want the federal government to jump in with both feet. Somebody said the other day, just as there are no atheists in foxholes, there are no libertarians in the banking sector, or you could say in Silicon Valley, once there's a run on the bank. And Gene, let's talk about the banks for a second, because we had to help them out. If we didn't help them out, this week would have been a week that we look back on probably much like September 15th, 2008. But you, in your latest op-ed, you nail it, all right? If banks want bailouts, and they want rescue plans, they have to also accept regulations. Because what happens is they fight regulations tooth and nail, as Silicon Valley Bank did. The bank blows up, and suddenly they want the feds to come in and rescue them.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank, Greg Becker, was among those who argued for the weakening of the Dodd-Frank rules, which would have necessitated annual stress tests of his bank. But he got the limit raised. They got the limit raised so that his bank would not have to undergo such testing. And if it had, maybe the problems would have been found. I'm so glad that we have Anand on this morning, because I was sitting down to write about this. I think my lead is that, what's the definition of a socialist? It's a libertarian tech bro who had money in Silicon Valley Bank. But my thinking was partly crystallized by a tweet that you wrote recently, kind of pointing that out, that gee, all of a sudden, all these anti-government types understand what government is for and what government can do to help people who are being buffeted by forces beyond their control. Talk about that for a while and accept my apology for the theft.
I love that. I'm glad that there's still redemption happening on Twitter, and people can still, can get ideas from that. Otherwise, swamp. Look, I think it's interesting that they want the bailout. But when you have this other issue of Silicon Valley toxifying the commons in every other sphere of life, they don't want the government coming near them, right? There's so much more research now that Instagram, TikTok, these other apps are destroying mental health for adolescents, right? Particularly for teenage girls in this country. There is a 3-alarm fire of suicide, eating disorders, other things happening caused by these kind of unregulated platforms. Right? And there, they don't want government stepping in. Right? When it comes to Airbnb and driving up housing costs across this country, they have hired a lot of ex-government people to lobby against the government doing anything to rein them in. When Uber and Lyft were asked by employees, by drivers who wanted to be employees, wanted a little more security in this economy, understandably. They pushed back saying, they're just contractors. We don't know them, push back against regulation. So Silicon Valley needs to decide, is it living in a libertarian paradise on an island outside the law? Or does we want to be part of the United States of America? In which case, if you want to avail of, the Securities and Exchange Commission, of regulation of finances, of our amazing courts of law that enforce your IP and all these other things, you need to be there for people when we want to regulate you, when we want to actually protect our common good against your profit motive.
So, John Heilemann, let's talk about the politics of this. We know over the last weekend, President Biden, of course, felt like the decision was made to step in with these banks, but he sort of expressed some reluctance privately that this was, Silicon Valley Bank and theirs, this was crypto investors, this was sort of tech gurus, that he was a little leery of that because he also remembers, of course, being President Barack Obama's vice president at the time, the fallout from what we saw in 2008 and 2009. So how do you think, what sort of backlash, what sort of reaction might we get here? How do you think this will shape the campaign ahead?
Well, very hard to say, but I'll say the other thing he remembers, I think Joe Biden does, and as anybody who watched the last couple cycles in our presidential politics play out, is that, in addition to the profound polarization that we have, the other big force in our politics has been populism. And notice this, you've seen it, the rise of the Sanders forces, which is whether Bernie Sanders never got the Democratic nomination, but there's millions of Democrats out there who have been in a state of righteous pissed offedness at Wall Street, Fortune 500, for a decade now. And it's an incredibly powerful force in the Democratic Party. And if you're Joe Biden, you need to, if you think you're going to be unchallenged for the Democratic nomination, you need to harness that energy to be able to win again, to win re-election. And being seen as the guy who's on the side of bank bailouts, and particularly bank bailouts related to the crypto sector and the guys in Silicon Valley, those rich dudes out there, is not the thing that animates people who rightly make a lot of the points, who feel not as articulately as Anand does, but have the sense that the game is rigged and that there is no cost. You can be playing with the casino money and you'll eventually get bailed out, even if you have not made any real contributions into the system. That is not a great path for a Democratic politician in 2024. And we know that on the right side, Donald Trump and or Ron DeSantis, certainly, whoever the Republican nominee is, they will try to tap into that. The right side, the populist impulses, and they do it in a promiscuous way. They do it in an intellectually inconsistent way, an ideologically inconsistent way. But it's there. It's a big part of what shapes the landscape. And so I think Biden, in his stomach, is like, do I want to say, would a banking collapse help us? No. Is the responsible thing to do to keep that from happening? Yes. Are the politics here dicey? Yeah, they're dicey, and it's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out over these coming months. And we'll see how much worse things get in the financial sector. This was the problem back in the first Great Recession too. They had to deal with all that kind of very hinky politics around doing the right thing.
It's a great point, and I think the last point you made is the most important, which is that, in a way, because the populist uprising of the last many years is not just Sanders. Trump was a different kind of populism. Yeah. Because it was so broad-based and powerful, there is now that sentiment and vote out there in the culture. And it's some on the left, some on the right. It's kind of all over the place. It's just it's an emotional impulse as well as a political analysis. Yeah. And when things like East Palestine happen, or when things like this bank run happen, if Democrats, I think, don't quickly claim that energy and quickly stand with that energy, they create this weird back alley for the right to insincerely stand with East Palestine or insincerely stand against bailouts. And it is insincere. It's always insincere from my point of view. However, it's a lane. It's an alley that very much can become a lane. You see folks like Josh Hawley, like flirting with that lane. And I think, above all, it's a warning sign to Democrats. You had a great piece in Politico today talking about the Biden unannounced reelection campaign kind of pivoting to the center. I think when you do that, you risk still not winning over those people who always have called you a communist and are still going to call you a communist in the moderate or center right, but really depressing the hell out of that incredible populist uprising that has been animating American politics in recent years.